Hello everyone, it's Agata from Somatox again. This is the second episode. I'm really happy to have you here today. I'm also truly glad to have this possibility of talking about yoga, because this is exactly our today's topic. Firstly, we will start with an introduction describing briefly what is yoga, what is the origin of it, and what is the basic statistic behind it. Then we will move to yoga types, especially for those who are considering which yoga should I start practicing. We will also cover this question. Then I will move on to benefits, many types of benefits of yoga, like physical ones, mental and emotional ones. Then I will quickly discuss the common myths behind yoga, things that stop people from starting practicing it. And then I will share with you some personal tips on how to practice yoga and how to start doing it. Firstly, what is actually yoga? Yoga, we could say, is a holistic mind and body discipline that originated in ancient India. It basically aimed at promoting physical health and mental clarity, also emotional balance and spiritual growth. So it's very multidimensional. The word itself, yoga, comes from the Sanskrit, which means to unite. It's referring to the union of the self, which is called in Sanskrit Atman, and the universal consciousness, which is called Brahman. Yoga combines many disciplines, but we could say mainly 4 of them. Firstly, asanas, so physical postures. Pranayama, breathing techniques that we mentioned in the first episode. Meditation and mindfulness, called dhyana, and ethical principles, because yoga is not only a practice, but it's also a lifestyle discipline, so it's a way of living. When it comes to the origins of yoga, when and how actually yoga started to exist, its earliest evidence shows that the roots of yoga go back over 5,000 years, with references in some ancient texts such as Vedas, written in Sanskrit. There are also some philosophical foundations, because around 200 years before Christ, the sage Patanjali systemized the whole yoga philosophy in Yoga Sutras. Also, 8 limbs of yoga, mainly Ashtanga yoga, that were outlined there, which was path to liberation and inner peace through yoga itself. Yoga was primarily a spiritual and meditative discipline, practiced by ascetics to transcend suffering and attain enlightenment, which in Sanskrit is called moksha. It's really important to note that, because nowadays many people may perceive yoga as a sport or purely physical practice, while its origins actually suggest that it's more of spiritual practice. When it comes to the evolution over the time, yoga evolved from this purely meditative practice into more physical, as I just said. So what about yoga today? Nowadays, yoga is practiced by millions of people worldwide, often in secular or very therapeutic context, but traditional yoga is deeply philosophical, and modern yoga, on contrary, often emphasizes the physical fitness, the stress reduction, and just overall wellness. But it still retains its ancient attention of body unification with mind and spirit. It also depends on the school type of yoga that you choose. Depending on that, you will focus more on the physical strength or flexibility, or meditation, for example, applying mantras and breath work. We could start brief overview of the major types of yoga with Hatha yoga, because Hatha yoga is a very universal, very general style of yoga, and one of the oldest, because it dates back to the 11th century and it is deeply rooted in ancient Indian spiritual traditions. It was originally developed as a preparatory practice. People who want to sustain the extended meditation firstly learned to practice Hatha yoga. This type of yoga encompasses physical postures, asanas, meditation, and it heavily relies on breathing techniques, pranayama, that we mentioned in the last episode. What is very important is that Hatha yoga is found partially in any other kind of yoga, because it's about synchronizing the movement with breath. The second type that is worth mentioning is vinyasa. Vinyasa yoga is also a very general and universal, and it's more modern than other types. It emphasizes on a flow instead of certain asanas. So the flowing sequence of poses in vinyasa lies at its core, and it's also important that these asanas are linked by breath. This is the element of hatha yoga in vinyasa. Vinyasa originates from the teachings of Krishna Maharya in the 20th century, not that long ago, but particularly the teachings of his student, Pattabhi Jois, who also developed Ashtanga, that I will mention in a few seconds. And the fluid system and style of vinyasa is often described as a moving meditation because it aims at attaining the benefits of meditation to our mind through the movement of our body. Thirdly, we have the already mentioned Ashtanga yoga. It is a very strictly systematized practice which was introduced by Pattabhi Jois in the mid-20th century, so similarly to vinyasa, but it is based on an ancient text known as the Yoga Korunta. So Ashtanga is a very rigorous technique. It's a very structured form of yoga, which consists of 6 series of postures performed in a set sequence. It emphasizes discipline, breath control, and the meditative flow. Some people joke that Ashtanga yoga is like a military type of yoga because it's really strict, as I said, and every asana must be put in order and is practiced up to perfection because the aim of this rigor of Ashtanga is to stop thinking about asana's order. We should do it automatically. Our mind can relax and doesn't have to think of the next step that we will have to take during our yoga practice so that we can reach the meditative flow as well. Then we have Bikram yoga. This is a very modern practice because it has around 50 years. It was founded in the 1970s. And it involves a fixed sequence of 26 postures and 2 breathing exercises. All of these are performed in a heated room. That's why it's also called hot yoga. And the room's temperature is around 40.6 Celsius degrees, which is equal to approximately 105 Fahrenheit degrees. Bikram yoga has gained a very rapid popularity in the US in the recent years, but it's also worth mentioning briefly that its founder became a very controversial figure. And if you would like to know more about him, I recommend you to watch a Netflix document. It's available there and you can find out more about Bikram. Then we have Iyengar yoga, which was developed by a man of this surname. And it is actually a form of hatha yoga. So the first type of yoga that we discussed today, but it emphasizes precision, alignment, and involves a lot of props like blocks, straps, chairs, and even blankets. He began teaching in the 1930s, and he published a very influential book called Light on Yoga in 1966, which popularized his method worldwide. So we could say that Iyengar yoga is more of a personal, individually developed type of yoga that you may also like to try because it uses a lot of props, which may be helpful not only at the beginning but also later on during your practice. The next type of yoga focuses more on deep relaxation, and it's called restorative yoga. So it's also a very modern practice, and it was pioneered by Judith Hanson Lassater in the 1970s. So again, it's approximately 50 years old. It also uses many props and emphasizes staying in poses for extended periods, up to 20 minutes. So it's quite a lot. It promotes recovery and stress relief. And what is important is that while we stay in an asana, we focus also on breathing because this is what helps us stay for so long in one posture. The 7th type of yoga that I would like to discuss today is yin yoga. It's also a very relaxation-focused practice and relatively recent one. It combines yoga with Chinese Taoist principles. It's, let's say, a modern interpretation of those Chinese techniques. It was developed by Polly Zink but later popularized by Paul Greeley and Sarah Powers. Maybe you have heard of these surnames. If not, you can always read a bit more about them if you want to know about origins of Yin Yoga. But what you should know at this moment is just that it involves holding passive poses for long durations. In this case, it's very similar to restorative yoga, but it's usually up to 3-5 minutes, so it's less than in restorative yoga. But it also targets deep connective tissues and joints. We work on a deeper level of our body to reach the really deep, authentic state of relaxation. Before we move on to the last type, power yoga, let's discuss also Kundalini yoga, because this one is quite popular and you might have heard about it. So Kundalini yoga has also roots in Asian spiritual traditions, and it was introduced to the West by Yogi Bhajan in 1969. It integrates dynamic breathwork, so again pranayama, but it also involves chanting, mantras, postures, asanas, and meditation to awaken the dormant Kundalini energy. And it is believed to reside at the base of the spine. We use this part of our body a lot. Many people say that this is also the sexual power, the sexual energy within us. And Kundalini is based on the repetitive movement. So if you want to try this one, be patient, because there are very dynamic sequences, but they are very repetitive. Last but not least, the power yoga, which emerged in the 1990s as a very westernized and fitness-oriented type of Ashtanga yoga. It was popularized by teachers like Birch or Kest. It doesn't follow a fixed sequence. It mostly emphasizes strength, stamina, flexibility, so it focuses more on the body than on the mind. It's also a very general style of yoga, we could say. The flow actually depends on the instructor, on the school, on your energy level, what you want to focus on individually. There are many types of power yoga. Remember that if you choose this type of yoga, you may always find something slightly different from the previous experience that you had with power yoga. Before I move on to the benefits of yoga, let me share with you some statistics that I found. It is estimated that over 300 million people practice yoga globally, and in the US only, it's around 34 million practitioners. This data comes from 2024. When it comes to the yoga industry, its value is estimated to be approximately $88 billion worldwide, and it's still growing. Most common reasons why people start yoga are flexibility, stress relief, and overall health. If you think like you would like to start it, or maybe you have already started it, I shared with you the yoga types that you can find in most of the yoga schools, or online as well, if you prefer to practice this way. But remember, doing the research and listening about yoga types is not enough, because you need to actually try it. The best way is just to go to school and check if you like the overall energy, ask the questions to yoga teacher if you have any, and try to understand this technique, this asana, this posture, this meditation exercise by asking and by trying. Don't stop only on listening, but also involve your body. It may sound obvious, but it's really important to feel connected, link your body to your mind, because yoga is not only a sport, it's more, because it also involves a spiritual practice and meditation and breath work. It's not only about being more flexible, but it's also about finding balance in everyday life. Now let's cover the benefits of yoga. Firstly, the physical benefits, for example, include the improved strength, flexibility. The research shows that just 8 weeks of yoga increased muscular strength by 10 to 30% and joint flexibility by 13 to nearly 188%. This is quite a lot, and it proves that we can feel the benefits of yoga directly on our body just within 8 weeks Of course, the more you practice, the better the results, but there is a limit because you always need to listen to your body. If it's too tired, too exhausted, you can always stop and you don't need to do all the exercises. The most important is to feel connected to your body. It is proved that yoga serves as a relief from pain. For example, the American College of Physicians recommends yoga as an early non-drug intervention for chronic low back pain. Yoga may really improve the functioning of your body and your bones. Then, it helps reduce key heart disease risk factors like high blood pressure, cholesterol, and abdominal obesity. There are also many mental and emotional benefits of yoga. It is shown that yoga consistently lowers perceived stress, anxiety, and depressive symptoms across multiple studies. This is very well-known benefit of yoga and the reason why many people start to practice it nowadays. It also improves the sleep quality and the well-being because yoga supports better lifestyle habits. It's about more mindful eating, increased physical activity, and smoking cessation. It boosts general vitality. Then we have cognitive and neurological support. Experienced yogis show less age-related loss in brain gray matter. Basically, if you practice yoga, you age more slowly. Yoga increases gray matter in areas related to memory and emotional capabilities. It also triggers parasympathetic nervous system, so the body rest and digest mode that we also discussed in the first episode. And it builds overall mental resilience and emotional regulation, which is so useful, especially nowadays, but in general, if you want to live in balance and in peace. A set of additional benefits is also found. Styles such as yin yoga, restorative yoga, or so-called trauma-sensitive yoga, also yoga nidra, enhance deep relaxation, body awareness, and trigger again the parasympathetic response. It aids with stress resilience. Another interesting information is that even cancer patients show moderate to large improvements in anxiety, depression, fatigue, and the quality of life. It proves that yoga can be used in any kind of situation in your life. Wherever you are currently, you can always try this practice to find some relief in your pain, in your struggles, or if you just want to prevent yourself from this, yoga is always a good option. Now I will try to assign these benefits to each type of yoga that we discussed. Hatha yoga improves flexibility, strength, and balance, and it also reduces stress and anxiety. The drawback is that it may be too gentle for some people, especially for those who seek intense workouts. Vinyasa yoga builds strength, flexibility, endurance, and it enhances cardiovascular health, but it may be a bit demanding for beginners. It's better to start with Hatha yoga and then move on to Vinyasa yoga. Next, Ashtanga improves strength, endurance because it's very intense and energizing. It may be very demanding physically and it's definitely not beginner friendly, but personally I started with Ashtanga yoga and it helped me a lot to keep this discipline from my practice, so it's also an option if you seek for very well structured type of yoga. Then Bikram yoga, so-called hot yoga, enhances flexibility, strength and also cardiovascular health, but the high heat environment may be actually unsafe for some people, especially those with some cardiovascular struggles. Then Yinegari yoga focuses on alignment, uses props, and it's suitable for injuries because it involves a very detailed approach. The only drawback is that it's less physically challenging. So if you seek for intense practice, maybe it's better to choose Ashtanga. Restorative yoga is good for deep relaxation, stress relief, and recovery, but it's not suitable for strength or cardio gains. Yin yoga, same. It improves relaxation, also joint health and flexibility, but these long poses may be uncomfortable and it also lacks cardio benefits. Kundalini yoga reduces stress and promotes spiritual awareness, but it includes a lot of chanting, meditation, which may not suit for everyone. This is a bit of deeper level practice, but if you are into yoga, you should also try mantras because it's another dimension of your body which is also crucial for finding the mental peace. Lastly, power yoga has many benefits, focused mainly on strength, flexibility, and endurance, but it may be too intense and too fast pace for beginners especially. To sum up, as you see, yoga brings many benefits, but they heavily depend on the type of yoga that you choose. So it's important to keep the individual approach and establish what you want to achieve through yoga, and then choose your favorite style to practice. Now let's move on to the common myths. Because maybe you are considering starting a yoga practice, but for example, you heard that yoga is only for the flexible people because it involves a lot of asanas that require flexibility. But actually it's a myth because yoga builds flexibility. Many people who are not flexible at all come to yoga practice in order to improve in this area, and this is why they come there. Why should you come to a flexibility practice if you are already flexible? If this is your case, just don't worry about it and try yoga, try flexibility workouts. You can also support yourself with some individual stretching to prepare better for such a practice. Then you may have heard that yoga is just stretching. It actually can be very intense, and some types of yoga like Ashtanga are very structured with a lot of endurance-based exercises. Then you may have heard that yoga is a religious practice, and this scares many people because they just want to attain some physical benefits without any spiritual engagement. Of course, yoga can be very spiritual, but it isn't tied to any religion. You can always choose some yoga type which is not spiritual at all, like power yoga or vinyasa yoga, purely focused on the physical activity. But if you seek for some deeper spiritual experience, you will easily find such yoga types. So it's really up to you. Even if yoga is spiritual, it is not tied to any religion. And the last myth that I want to discuss today is very straightforward because many people think that yoga is only for women. But it's not true because there is a growing male participation in yoga. Benefits of yoga that I mentioned are for everyone, not only for women. So no matter what's your gender, you can try yoga and you will have wonderful benefits. Don't treat yoga as a practice assigned to only one gender. Yoga is for everyone. It's a universal practice for everyone who wants to achieve balance and explore him or herself. The last part of today's episode is my personal advice. How to start yoga. Basically, find your style. Sign up for various classes and decide which style feels the best to you. You can also switch styles. So once you feel more tired, you can go to yin yoga to restore your energy. And when you need more energized practice, go to Ashtanga or power yoga. Start slowly. Don't go to a yoga practice every day. Just listen to your body, what it needs, how often does it need it. Starting with one practice per week is really enough. Because yoga is not about having to do something or having a workout planned in your agenda, but it's about connecting to your body and to your mind. Listening to yourself is the most important. If you feel like skipping a practice, it's okay. You will do it the next day. Don't treat it as a task to be done. You have two types of classes, online or in-person classes. Personally, I definitely recommend you going there in person to a school to meet the teacher, to talk, to ask the questions, to feel the energy in the room. If you don't have such an option, or if you consider yourself as someone who's very introvert, you can always try online, which is good for people who need a flexible agenda and who, for example, travel a lot and so on. There are a lot of apps and YouTube channels that you can practice yoga with. I don't want to suggest you any particular one because it really depends on the type of yoga that you're looking for. Vinyasa, power yoga, or yin yoga. There are even a lot of playlists for yin yoga on Spotify because yin yoga oftentimes doesn't engage too many asanas, but it focuses more on the relaxation state. So the music in the background plays an important role in this type of yoga. My last personal advice would be honoring your limits. Yoga is rather a journey, it's not a competition. In yoga, you explore yourself. You learn to listen to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be good to yourself. Don't be too harsh. Don't treat it as a purely physical practice because the spiritual element of yoga, this linkage to meditation and your mind is crucial. Also focus on breath work because yoga without breathing is not really yoga. You always need to link asanas to breath. Keep that in mind. When it comes to the time, to the duration of practice, it's really up to you. You can choose how long you want to make it at a given day. Always align it to your current state of being. Listen to your body and mind. I recommend to start yoga with a breathwork exercise from 3 to 5 breath techniques that may help you become connected to your body before starting asanas. You can use some chanting, mantras. At the end, you can use Om and Shanti mantras. And remember to do the Shavasana posture of relaxation at the end of every practice. Yoga is not about doing the practice every day with the highest intensity, but it's more about being systematic and just knowing that yoga is your personal tool to make you feel better. Before every practice, I observe myself and I ask myself, how do I feel today? What would I like to focus on? And then before finishing, after Shavasana, I always ask myself, how do I feel now? So do I feel the effects of this practice? Did it improve my state of being? Usually the answer is yes. And this is what keeps me practicing yoga on a regular basis because I feel the benefits in practice. And I encourage you to do the same, even if you don't feel like practicing an intense set of asanas on a given day. You can just make a 15 minutes practice with more yin yoga restorative style, focused more on breathing, meditating, or staying in the same asanas. Because it's not about the intensity and duration of a practice, but it's more about the fact that you're showing up on the mat and you're trying to find peace of your mind for your body. And this is what Soma Talks is about, linking the body and the mind. Yoga is a beautiful example of this linkage. So I really encourage you to try to understand yourself more through yoga. That's it for today. Thank you for being here. I hope you liked this episode. Of course, follow the Instagram account to find out more about the podcast and the yoga. Thank you for being here. Until next time, Soma Talks, Agata Daras.